once more, and welcome back to this episode on testing writing. Having typified language tests as being direct versus indirect, discrete point versus integrative, and structural versus communicative, let's now discuss ways of planning for a test. Two different ways of planning a test can be distinguished. That of planning for an indirect discrete point structural test and that for a direct integrative communicative test. Planning a test entails preparing a table of test specifications. The table of specifications serves as the blueprint for a test similar to the architect's plan, which is followed in building a house. What you see on the screen is what you call a table of specifications for a structural test. The first row indicates the test content, weight, number, and placement of items about each content to be covered in the test. The left-hand-most column, on the other hand, shows the content coverage of the test. The second column, weight, is expressed in percentage. It shows the degree of importance an item carries. As the table indicates, among the three discourse markers, the smallest weight is given to definition discourse markers with only 20%, while the latter two kinds equally have a weight of 40%. The weight determines the number of items which will be needed to test a particular item. Thus, 20% or 6 items will be used to test definition discourse markers. On the other hand, to test the other two kinds of discourse markers, 40% or 12 items each will be prepared. We are now ready to construct test items for a structural test. Let us first see a structural test on rhetorical markers.
I will read the directions for this test. Please listen as you read the directions on your copies. Right? Directions are: choose from these markers the one that best completes a statement. And these markers are in which, like, similarly, by contrast, for example, and now. Okay? Any questions? Okay, so please begin.
This test is not necessarily a test of writing in terms of expository writing in the target language, but rather they use writing as a means of testing such aspects of language as grammar and vocabulary. How is a communicative writing test planned? Planning for a communication test is quite different from planning for a discrete point test. In the first place, the test developer must be aware of the features of a communicative test. Do you know what they are? Let's take a quick look at them. First, a communicative test emphasizes interaction between participants. Second, it is purposive in that it aims to fulfill some communicative functions. Third, it uses authentic texts and tasks. And fourth, it gives importance to appropriate language use. Fifth, it may integrate the 4 language skills. And sixth, it uses direct testing methods. Seventh, it uses qualitative assessment procedures. Eighth, it is accomplished within normal time constraints. And ninth, the form and content of the language produced may be unpredictable. Quite a demand, isn't it? Now, these features imply that the specifications for the communicative writing test should consider the writing tasks, the purpose for writing, the participants in the communication process, the topic of the communication, the setting, time, the language functions focused on, the stimulus, the response attributes, and the scoring procedure. Again, quite a number of elements to consider, but don't worry, you don't have to include all of them in your test specifications. Anyway, let's look at a sample specification which includes some of these elements. Note that the task is to write a letter requesting a favor. The participants are a student, the writer of the letter, and a teacher, the receiver or reader of the letter. The language functions involved are describing a situation, giving reasons, requesting a favor, stating possibilities, and expressing thanks. The stimulus is a description of the context of the tasks. The letter to be written should have the attributes of a letter and should make use of the functions stated earlier. The letter should be written in 20 minutes. The scoring procedure is analytic. Now, let's look at the test item.
Direction. Read the situation below and the writing task required of you. Write your answer on the answer sheet provided. Pretend that you are a third-year Section Balagtas student at Claudio Sandoval High School in Pasig City, Metro Manila. You were not able to take the quarterly exams in English given on the second school day of this week. You had a high fever because of inflamed tonsils. The school doctor advised you to rest in the school clinic until a member of your family could come for you. You have no classes on Friday afternoons. Write a letter to your English teacher, Mrs. Joanna Acuna, requesting that you be given a special test. Use the date today. Your home address is 1025 Sixto Antonio Avenue, Pasig City. Your letter should be just long enough to be written on one side of an 8.5 by 11 bond paper. You have 20 minutes to write the letter. You will be rated on language use, content, organization, vocabulary, and mechanics.
Does the test have the features of a communicative writing test? Yes, it does. You must have noticed that the test provided the information the student needed to compose a good letter. These writing tasks can also be called a guided tasks. Can you develop tests similar to the one I showed you? Oh yes, you can. Right now, think of some authentic writing tasks required of your students. Have you taught them how to perform these tasks? Yes? Okay. You may now start thinking and planning how to assess their ability to perform the tasks. When we return, we'll show you another test that focuses on rhetorical markers, but is integrative in nature. Don't go away.